Hello friends, welcome to Free English Grammar in the second block of active and passive voice. Today we will learn all about conversion of active voice to the passive voice in this video. So without any delay, let's get started. But please watch the video till the end to get all the information about active and passive voice and its conversion. Now before going to the main chapter, let us remember whatever we have learned in the previous videos. We have got two ways to change active and passive voice of the action with related to the subject and to the object. So active voice is subject does the action and object receives the action. So here the format is subject plus verb plus object, whereas in the passive voice the action is performed on the object by the subject. And so the sentence structure here is object plus helping verb plus third form of the verb plus by plus subject. Now let us take some examples of active voice to understand it better. Mayank repaired my car. So if we have to change it into passive voice to write it in a sentence way, it will be my car was repaired by Mayank. So here both the sentences gives the same meaning, but in the first sentence here the more importance is given to the subject Mayank, where he does the action of repairing the car and the action is performed on the object. In the second sentence, more importance is given to the object my car and the action performed on it by the subject, but less importance is given to the subject here. But we use active voice mostly in general. But there are two ways of using passive voice. If you want to give less importance to the subject but more importance to the action and the receiver in the sentence. And the second is if you do not know the subject at all. We have discussed all these points in the previous videos with more examples. If you haven't watched, please go and watch it. Now let's see how we can convert any active voice to the passive voice. There are mainly 5 basic steps to convert active voice to the passive voice. Let's see them one by one. Identify the subject, object and the verb in any sentence. The second, swap the subject with the object and the object with the subject. Thirdly, convert the main verb to the third form of the verb. Fourth, add a proper helping verb to be before a main verb. And the last, add proper preposition by before the subject. Thus, the sentence structures of the passive voice is object plus helping verb plus third form of the verb plus by plus subject. So dear learners, these are the 5 steps that we should take care. There are 2 main important things that we need to look into in the changes. While changing the subject, which is a pronoun, to the subject, and the conversion will be like this. I will become me, he become him, she becomes her, we become us, they become them. Please remember them properly. Secondly, we need to add proper helping verb of to be before main verb. But this helping verb is decided based on the tenses. Now let's see with the main verb right. Now let's look to the different types of helping verb as per to the tenses one by one that we need to learn them. In simple present, here in the active voice, first we have for singular write or writes. In passive voice, we add is, am or are depending on the singular or the plural of the subject and written. For present continuous active voice, we have is or am or are depending on the singular or plural of the subject and writing. In passive voice, we add being with am, is, are helping verb and written. For present perfect tense in active voice, we use have written, while in passive voice, we add been after the helping verb have and written. For simple past active voice, we write wrote, which is verb's first form, while in passive voice, we use was or were and third form of the verb written. For past continuous tense in active voice, we use was or were and writing. But in passive voice, we add being after a helping verb was or were and written. For past perfect tense, in active voice, we use had written. While in passive voice, we add been after an helping verb had and written. For simple future tense, in active voice, we use will write. While in passive voice, we use will be and written, which is verb's third form. For future perfect tense in active voice, we use will have written. But in passive voice, we add been after a helping verb will have and written, which is verb's third form. So these are the 8 tenses chart for understanding which helping verb to use. So you may have noticed that in this chart we have not used 4 kinds of tenses, which are present perfect continuous, past perfect continuous, future continuous and future perfect continuous. So in English grammar, we don't use the conversion of these 4 kinds of tenses as their conversion is grammatically not correct. To know more about tenses, please watch the playlist that are given in the description. Dear learners, now let's see with examples of each 8 tenses to make it clearer. Simple present tense. For active voice, he writes a letter. Now to convert this into passive voice, we will follow the 5 steps that we have discussed earlier. Step 1. To identify subject, object and the verb. In this sentence, who is doing the work? So it is he, and thus he is a subject. What is the action performed? It writes, and thus write is a main verb. On which the action is performed? It is the letter, and thus it is an object. Now we have identified the subject, verb and the object. Now let's move to the second step. Now we need to swap the subject and the object and the object and the subject. So the object, a letter, will be in the first and he will turn to him and will be placed in the last position. Now let's go to step 3. Now we need to convert the main verb to third form of the verb, which is written. Fourth step, we need to add a helping verb. So it will be is written as the sentence is simple present tense. Now if you read this sentence, it will be a letter is written him. Do you think the sentence is correct? No. So here the 5 step will come. So where we have to add by before the subject. Now the sentence is completed. A letter is written by him. Dear learners, I hope you are clear with this tense. Now let's see some examples of present continuous tense. Active voice. Javed is making a cake. First step is to identify the subject, object and the verb. Here who is doing the action? It is Javed. So Javed is an subject. And what is the action? It is making, and thus making is an verb. Who is receiving the action? It is a cake, and thus cake is an object. Step 2. We have to swap the position of subject and the object and the subject. Third step, we have to convert the verb into a third form, and thus making will become made. Fourth step, we have to add a helping verb of to be. In present continuous, we add here is being. Last step, we add preposition by before a subject Javed, and thus finally it is completed, and the passive voice becomes a cake is being made by Javed. Dear learners, now let's see examples of present perfect tense. Active voice. I have eaten a burger. Firstly, we have to identify the subject, verb and the object. Here, I is the subject and eaten is the verb and burger is the object. Now let's swap the position of the subject and the object. Here it will be a burger and I will change to me and placed in the last position. And changing the main verb to the third form, it will be eaten. Now adding a suitable helping verb, it will be has been. And lastly, we have to add by before the subject to make it complete. Thus the whole sentence of passive voice becomes a burger has been eaten by me. Now let's see example of simple past tense. Active voice. He bought a car. Firstly, we have to identify the subject, verb and the object. Here, he becomes the subject, bought becomes the verb, and a car is the object. Now let's swap the position of subject and the object. It will be a car and he will change to him and position in the last place. In converting the main verb bought to the third form, it will be bought. And adding a suitable helping verb, it will be was. And adding a suitable preposition before a subject will be by. And thus the whole sentence becomes complete, and it is a car was bought by him. Now let's see examples of past continuous tense. Active sentence. Sarah was singing a song. Passive sentence. Now let's get the subject, verb and the object. We have to identify it first. So here Sarah becomes the subject, singing becomes the verb, and a song is the object. Now let's swap the position of subject and the object. It will be a song and Sarah will be Sarah and position in the last place. And converting the main verb to third form, it will be sung. Now adding a suitable helping verb, it will be was being. And adding a preposition by before the subject. Thus a sentence in a passive will come, a song was being sung by Sarah. Now let's see example of past perfect tense. Active sentence. Jay had finished homework. In passive sentence, firstly the subject is Jay and the verb is finished and the object is homework. Now firstly, let's swipe the subject and the object. So the Jay subject will be at the last and homework will be in the front. Now converting the main verb to the third form, it will be finished. And adding a suitable helping verb of to be, it will be had been. And adding a suitable preposition before the subject by makes the sentence complete. So a passive sentence is homework had been finished by Jay. Now let's see examples of simple future tense. Active sentence. She will accept the offer. In passive sentence, firstly the subject is she, the verb is accept, and the object is the offer. Now let's swap the subject and the object in each position. So she will turn to her and placed at the last and the object in the first. Now converting the main verb to the third form, it will be accepted. Next, adding a suitable helping verb of to be, it will be. And lastly, we need to add by before the subject to make it complete. And thus the passive voice will be, the offer will be accepted by her. Now let's see an example of future perfect tense. Active sentence. I will have charged the battery. In passive sentence, firstly the subject is I and the verb is charged and the object is the battery. Now let's swap the position of subject and object. Here I will change to me and placed at the last position and the battery in the first position. And converting the main verb to the third form, it will be charged. Next, adding a suitable helping verb of to be will have been. And lastly, we have to add a by before the subject. Thus, the passive sentence is, the battery will have been charged by me. So dear learners, these are the 8 parts of tenses where we can change from active to the passive voice. I hope you all are clear with the conversion and you will not have any problem in the conversion of active to the passive voice. That's all in this video. Now let us revise back whatever we have learned from the beginning in this video. We defined the 5-step formula to convert any active voice to the passive voice. Firstly, identifying subject, object and the verb of the sentence. Then, secondly, we have swiped the subject and the object and the subject of its place. Third, we converted the main verb to the third form of the verb. And fourth, we have added helping verb before the main verb. And the last, we have added a suitable preposition before the subject to make it complete. So that's all. Thank you for watching my video. If you have any questions and suggestions, please drop them in the comment box. And don't forget to like and share if it is helpful. Do share it with your friends if you think it is helpful. And don't forget to subscribe the channel too.